Hello and welcome everybody to today's episode. I am very excited about this. I've got a special guest that's going to be coming on in just a moment. I'll introduce you to her. But I wanted to take a moment and thank everybody. I want to thank the audience. This is why we do what we do. And we've been getting some feedback recently that has just really blessed us. And it's encouraging to know that this is helping you. After all, at the end of the day, if this doesn't help, there's no point in doing it at all. But it's the comments that have come in and the emails have been phenomenal. And so I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you guys taking the time to share and to let us know what's happening. Let us know how we could serve you. Let us know what specific thing did help you and helped change the life of yourself and your family. So it's really encouraging to see. Thank you. I want to keep that up. And just so you guys know, we welcome comments. We welcome questions. If we can get to the questions near the end, we will. And maybe, if it's a relevant question at the moment, we might decide to talk about it right now. So feel free to chime in. And so without hesitation, without waiting any longer, I am very excited to introduce to you a friend and my special guest here today, Libby Jane. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody. So good to be here. Thank you for having me, Jason.
No problem. You are a wellness expert, and I know that you're a mom, you're an entrepreneur, you wear many hats. And so before this broadcast, we've been able to talk a little bit, but why don't you take a moment and share with our audience a little bit more about who you are and what you're up to.
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Libby, and I'm a mom of girls, all girls, and they are, I wouldn't say real young, but middle-aged for children. So middle-aged children. Never heard that term before, but that's what they are. So we're kind of in the stages of they can do lots independently. They have quite the personality, a lot of thoughts and ideas and choices that they'd like to make for themselves. And I'm just learning a lot about that stage versus the stages that I taught when I was a school teacher. I also am a wellness support specialist, so I love coaching people, helping empower people through their healing process, and really providing safe spaces for people to heal. I think that's really important, and it's more of a mutuality kind of role than, say, like a counselor or a therapist, which are also vital and very important. But sometimes we need that mutuality to feel safe, to really open up for someone else to say, me too, Right.
Definitely. That's awesome. So today we really wanted to dive into the subject of creating a safe, emotionally safe home. What does that mean? What does that look like to you?
So I'm so excited about this topic because obviously I helped pick it, but I really feel like, y'all know we need more love. We need more empathy in the world. We need more safety. We've been in a culture that has said, do your own thing and be your own person and figure it out and get it together, and don't really let anybody know that you're struggling. And what I find is that the culture right now is shifting majorly. People really want real. They want raw. They want to relate to one another. They want to connect again after being so disconnected. And so I think it's just a great time to tackle this subject. And I know that for me, like recently I saw this quote and it made me think about the kind of parent I want to be. It said, I never want my kids to mess up and think mom's going to kill me. But I would rather their first thought to be, oh crap, I need to call mom.
Right.
So providing that kind of relationship, that kind of safety where, we're not enabling our children, but we really are friends with our children. They consider us friends. They consider us a safe place to run to. I think is so valuable. So I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing on this podcast, and that this is a topic that we get to cover tonight.
Yeah, no, it's definitely needed. Many of you know I'm a father of 6 kids. I've got 3 teenage girls in the house, and
Wow.
then of course 3 couple of younger ones, and it is a scary thought to think that when a child gets in trouble or they find themselves in a situation or a scenario where maybe they're in trouble or they're in danger, rather than saying, I need to call mom, many of them say, oh no, I need to hide this from mom.
Mm.
or dad, and then it causes them to run away from mom and dad rather than run to them. So I think that like really is a great place to kick this off in our discussion on creating that emotional safety. It's almost like I see a bridge between the heart of our sons and daughters to our heart, and we need to make sure that bridge is open so that they can cross it at any time.
Yes.
And so I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of this. We were talking earlier before the show, and there's so much to cover. So we may go fast, but we're going to really try to just break it down into smaller pieces that we can digest. If we have to, we'll just continue on another time. But that bridge that I see from our hearts is really important. But what would an emotionally safe home look like? And what does it not look like? I think that something that we can consider is having a safe home, especially as a dad. I'm responsible for the safety of my family and for my kids. So, but there is an emotional element to that as well, not just a physical safety. So we can provide for our kids, our family. We could have the home, have the food, have everything that they need, but still not be supplying the emotional needs that they have to feel safe.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. And I like that you talk about the, comparison of what is healthy and what is safe and what is not helpful, what is not create safety. Because I think those are equally important because we're so confused as a culture. I don't know about you, but, most of the homes that we grew up in, our parents did the very best that they could, right? But there was a lot of not knowing, just trying to figure it out as you go and not knowing what was healthy. And so therefore we got a lot of things like minimizing, oh, you're fine,
Right.
Oh, you'll figure it out, or that's not that big of a deal kind of attitude, which is very invalidating, right? A lot of projection. So projection basically says, I'm into this, so therefore you should be into this, or I don't really care about that, so you shouldn't care about that. So we project our ideals as parents onto our children, right?
Yeah.
And so really, that's a call for, so much affirmation. I know you guys talked about gifts and really like bringing out and pulling out our children's gifts and really seeing how uniquely gifted they are, and affirming that. And the reason we need that so much is because we've been so, disaffirmed and invalidated by these fear-based techniques, right? These fear-based responses or really reactions, instead of proactively really trying to get to the heart, really hearing the heart every time we speak with someone, whether it's our children or, our spouse or a neighbor or a friend. What is their heart saying? Where is it? And it can be different than mine. It's okay to be different. It's okay
Right.
that you value this and I wanted you to be a doctor, but you want to be an artist. That's okay. Let's affirm you in that,
Yeah.
So that's a piece of emotional safety. But I mean, part of me thought, how do we even define emotional safety? Like, I would love to even have the viewers, if you're willing to drop a comment, like, what do you consider safe? Like, if you were to open up in a conversation or with a person, what would have to be there for you to feel like you can be vulnerable? Because I think it's a lot of different answers, for different people.
Definitely. Yeah. It's, I mean, what do you say? I mean, there's a lot to discuss, but what would you say is like an obvious hindrance to that emotional safety and the emotional connection that we have with our kids?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I definitely think in the world of overstimulated, so much going on, so busy that we're distracted. But I also think we're distracted internally inside with fear. Like a lot of what's driving us, what has been driving us, I know for myself, when I'm responding to my girls and I realize, that I'm coming down in a way I feel almost the control rising up in me. Like if I am going to have a controlling response, and certainly I've had those times, that it's coming out of fear. It's like I can feel this happening inside and I'm afraid of something. Like if I don't say this right now, or if they don't stop this right now, or you know what I mean? Like, or I'm wanting to control it out of fear.
Right.
And so I think that fear is the biggest hindrance that I would say. And I want to get into more of that and some other things, that I think keep us from having the connection that we need to have and want to have. But yeah, did anybody drop anything in the comments that provides emotional safety, or maybe something that doesn't, that makes you feel like you can't share because you're not safe?
Yeah, I haven't seen
I
anything
think
come
that's
in
great.
yet.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
So
but go for it. Dive into this.
yeah, okay, let's go. So one definition, if we're going to give a definition of emotional safety, which again is widespread, but is an emotional state achieved in attachment relationships wherein each individual is open and vulnerable, right? So, always the goal in parenting and in any relationship is to maintain that strong, loving connection. It's all about connection, right? We're made for connection. Women, especially, I mean, this is why we have so many girlfriends, or a lot of us, need our girlfriends because we're so driven by connection. But I think men are too. And so we really need to, like you said, open that up, make sure that bridge is able to be crossed, a continual connection that is love-based and not fear-based. Again, we've been so disconnected in our culture. Can you think of have there ever been times with your kids that you've been disconnected from them and you don't, maybe there's reasons you know or reasons you don't know?
Yeah, I mean, it can happen without us even being aware. It can happen in a moment, especially, being busy.
Yeah.
Sometimes a lot of people have like two jobs, especially, think of sometimes single parents have 2 or 3 jobs. And
Yes.
I mean, how can they maintain that open bridge of connection?
Mm-hmm.
So I think being busy is one that's been something I've had to really regulate. Being able to take the time to stop whenever my kids come to me, especially after school, with so many in the home after school. I told them at one point, I said, you guys need to take a number, because everybody walks in the door and they all come to me and they want to tell me about their day. They want to tell me what went right, how much fun they had, or they want to tell me what went wrong and why they're upset. And it's like, hold on a minute. I have to recharge because I just got home from work or whatever. And so I need a few minutes to like detox, just kind of calm things down. But then also make sure that I do take the time to notice and to pay attention to H1 as they need it.
I thought you were calling them H1, like you named them H1, no. H2, H3, H1.
I know, right? You're number 1, you're number 2, you're 3. But each one, it's all, there's a huddle time, but then like they all want individual connection.
Yeah.
And I think honoring that and making sure that we don't pass it off to the other spouse. If you're the mom, don't say, oh, well, go see your dad. Or if you're the dad, oh, don't go see your mom. Because I think that sometimes that could be a temptation, especially if we're busy, cooking dinner or whatever, and our kids come to us, we can just brush them off and say, oh, I'm busy, go over here. Or go watch TV.
Yes, definitely been there. Video. I think that screams self-care and paying attention to your own wellness. We're not going to get a ton into that tonight, but I say tonight because I'm in Illinois time.
Over here in California.
The sun's setting here already.
Yeah, it's bright and sunny here.
Right? I wish I were you. But no, for our own wellness, like you said, to pay attention to our limitations, what we need to be recharged and ready for our children, what we needed to do to take care of ourselves and put our face mask on first, right? Because you say, you can't take care of anybody else unless you take care of yourself. So I think that's great that you do assess that, and that you can even communicate that to your kids. Mama needs 5 minutes in the bathroom just to breathe and think, and we'll talk about it in 5 minutes or whatever. Right. That's okay to do, and have your own needs. That's okay. Mm-hmm. So let's see. So back to kind of what we were saying about some of the ways that we get disconnected, things that are unhelpful in relating with our kids. When we talk about minimizing, projecting, fixing the problem, right? And then even that becomes this kind of nitpicking, like either I'm minimizing what you're going through, so that's kind of a negative bent, or I'm projecting onto you what I like and what I do, so that's disaffirming, or I'm trying to fix you, so that must mean there's something wrong, right? So there's all these negative kind of filters on that. And like from when I taught school, report cards, right? For instance, we're taught through report cards, here's the criteria, here's when you get an A, you get a B, but what do we look for first, right?
Right.
The D or the C, right? And so really shifting to a strengths-based approach, to, that's just a basic, and, create connection, because we can, instead of seeing what's lacking, what's wrong with you, it's what's right with you, really shifting the question.
Yeah. So really just building up their strengths, affirming them, showing them that they're accepted, that they're loved, I think goes into building that bridge between the two of you. I guess that's the whole heart of this conversation, is to maintain, how do you maintain that safety, so that the kids in a child's mind, it would be interesting to, and I haven't even asked any kids this, but it would be interesting to ask them, and I will ask them, and then we'll talk about it in the next show. In a kid's perspective, what does emotional safety mean? But I really do see this bridge from their heart to our heart. And so as parents, what can we do? Because we're the ones responsible to build that bridge and to keep it open.
Right. And to model for them what relationships look like in their own life outside of the one they have with us,
Exactly. And so I think that by affirming them, like you were talking about, and encouraging them, building them, encouraging their strengths, acknowledging their strengths, is a part of building that bridge.
It absolutely is. Absolutely is. Because think about if you hear the stories of, I always wanted to be this, but my dad or my mom never liked that, or never really heard me that I wanted to play drums, or that I wanted, they had their own reasons, but they still into adulthood never felt affirmed, and how much they held back, how much their heart of hearts, their passions and their dreams and their desires were held back by that. So absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So that's more, so speaking to them and affirming them is one way of building this bridge. So what about listening? How important do you think listening is in this?
So listening is a huge part of connection. I think it's so much easier to talk. One acronym I've learned in the recovery support work that I've done is WAIT, and that stands for why am I talking?
Okay.
Like in a conversation.
That's good.
Am I just trying to fill space? Am I trying to fix something? Or am I really hearing what this person's saying to me, and really listening, not just for the words that they're saying, but listening for the meaning behind, right? I think it's easy to just kind of take, you see arguments break out because, you said this, or in a marriage, you said that, and I took that word to mean this, but there's a meaning behind, right? And there's perspective and a lens that we see through that's different. So we have to ask questions, and we have to, part of listening is being quiet sometimes, and part of it is reflecting back what you've heard to see if you're right. And part of it is, asking those open-ended questions to learn more, to show I want to know you. I want to hear what you're actually getting at, because I've never experienced that before, or I can't say that I know what that's like,
Right.
So I'd have to dig. Absolutely. So I mapped out just some basic principles to start us with. I feel like I want to get into a lot of the empathy and the communication piece, but just for starters, principles of parenting from a place of safety would be, number one, connection, that heart-to-heart connection we talked about. It's not our job to control our children. It's our job to teach our children how to control themselves. So that we got to let go of control and trade it for connection. And then the second one would be empowerment. What are you going to do? Asking the child, what do you think you'll do about that? Or, putting the power, the choice back into their hands, instead of you should, or, I can't believe you, or, some of these other phrases that we can use that takes the power away from the child or the teen. Third one would be a safe place, providing the safe place by saying, I can handle your mistakes. Right. I don't expect you to be perfect. I don't expect you to be like me. You're free to be you. And that's kind of goes into the fourth one, unconditional love, which says nothing can separate you from my love. Nothing that you do, nothing that you say. There's a security and a safety in that. And it doesn't have to be necessarily said, but it's said through your actions, through your words, through your choices. And then also ways that we, express. How do we express? So those would maybe be principles of connection, but how does it look? And we kind of talked about some of this, but being present with your kids, being present and engaged. And we talked about the present, we're so distracted by the shame of our past or guilt over what we're not doing or trying to run this race to get somewhere, right? And looking to the future and the worries, right? All the worries that are on us as parents. So many worries, but it's like, then what about right now? What about now is now? We don't get now back again. So really being present in the now. And your children are constantly evolving, right? Our kids are changing all the time. And, they just change at such a rapid rate. I mean, compared to even adults that we've got to give them.
Yeah, I noticed that kids are very wise also. They're sharp. And if you're there
Yes.
listening to them, they know whether you're really there or not.
Yeah.
You
I'm
could be
like looking at
listening.
my.
We could be listening and they'll like call us out on it. Like, Dad, where are you?
Hey, are you here?
Yeah.
You're checking your phone. Yeah,
Right.
I get called out at times for sure because yeah, it's so distracting. It's so distracting, and we have to almost be really intentional at times with I'm gonna set this timer. I'm gonna turn my phone off during these 3 hours in the evening or whatever it looks like.
Right.
Whatever you have to do to create that presence of being here in the now. There's that quote that says, "Yesterday is the past, tomorrow's the future, but today is a gift." That's why they call it the present, right?
Right.
So the other thing that I thought of was just, being a noticer. So what does it mean to notice our children? When we notice something, what do we use to notice? What senses would you think of?
Tone of voice. We notice like their appearance. We notice their attitude, whether it's positive or negative.
Right. So you're
Just-
picking up on that
yeah.
both with your emotions and your eyes. You might see them doing various things. It causes you, I mean, to be a noticer, you have to pay attention, right?
Right.
But you can pay attention with various senses. So we want to be noticers because our kids need to be seen. They need to be seen and they need to know that they're not just another person that you could care less about or, just the same as their sibling even or insignificant. Our kids need to know that they're significant, that they really, really matter. And so when we're a noticer, we get to see things. For instance, my daughter, it's like sometimes I'm saying, wow, I noticed, you're really working hard to keep up with your schoolwork and still compete in gymnastics and go, 3 times a week or whatever it is. And we could say that to our teen. Like, I see how hard you're working to maintain this and doing all these things at the same time. And just looking for ways every day that we can verbalize what we're seeing that's good in them. Like we said, affirming the strengths. Then the other thing would be being a listener. So we talked about being a listener. That means our kids are going to feel heard. So first they need to feel seen. And they also need to feel heard. And that's through the listening. So then number 3, I have, champion your child. So we're their cheerleader. We're the one championing them, holding their arms up in the air when they feel like they can't keep going or they don't know what to do, right? We are the ones complimenting them in front of people that, wherever we are, like at a sports game and just going, yeah, Olive, she's just always thinking about her friends and the people around her. She's just, I want to be like her when I grow up. She's got such a beautiful heart, just finding ways to speak well of our children, even in front of others, to let them know that we see them, we hear them, they're important, and that we're cheering for them. And then finally speak their love language. So I know we hear about love languages all the time, and I'm not trying to, tell you something you already know, but it's so important to know your child's love language and then look for ways that you can show them love in that way. I receive love through touch and words of affirmation, but if I have a daughter who's acts of service, I can know that, or I can know that in my actions every day, finding ways that I can show her, that she's loved through her love language, I think is super key.
Right. And one thing we have to make a conscious decision that we're going to learn another language. So if you're, you mentioned that your love language is words of affirmation. If you have a daughter that's not their love language at all, maybe it's gifts, then it's unnatural for you to think and express love in that way.
Yes.
And I know, like with my kids too, the more you have, the more diverse your family is going to be. So be careful, guys. One certainly is the acts. If I do something for her, it means a lot For the other, she likes material gifts. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I don't even know how, I may have to consciously make an effort to learn how to express love in
Mm-hmm.
that way so they'll
Mm-hmm.
receive it.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Exactly.
again, like I think that's part of the parents' responsibility to build that bridge
Mm-hmm.
between us. And
Yes.
they're not going to know how to do that. They don't have the capacity. They're just figuring out a lot of other things in life. So,
Yes.
let alone build an emotional bridge between parent, because our
Mm-hmm.
relationship is probably the most complex one and yet the most important one in their
Yes.
life, because we need to be the authority, we need to be the disciplinary, but we also need to be the loving friend as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as a parent, learning how to do all those at the right time is extremely important.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, love languages is huge. If anybody is listening and they're not sure what we're talking about, there's a book that's called The Five Love Languages. Gary Chapman. You can Google that or find that on Amazon or whatever. Huge, valuable resource. Valuable
I
resource.
believe he has one for children
He
too, or
does.
direct
Yeah.
to children,
Yep.
which is awesome.
Definitely.
So yeah, so all of that equates to, kind of those principles and then the ways we express them that I talked about, being seen, known, and loved, and that's what's going to create the foundation for emotional connection, ongoing safety in relationship is feeling seen, known, and loved.
Yeah.
Um, in that, wherever you are, come as you are. And even in that place, and we're talking even the messy places, even the places where our kids aren't making good choices, or they're not well, emotionally or mentally or whatever, or they're struggling, we can still express that. And that's actually the most important time to express those things. Not that we shouldn't beforehand, but in those pivotal moments, when your child says,
Yeah.
I'm not okay, or I'm contemplating this or that, or I've been cutting, or, you know, whatever it is, what's going to be our response? Because that moment can make or break everything. And they're crying out in desperation. And are we there to say, you're seen here and you're known here in this place and you're still loved?
Right. Yeah. I reflecting back at a time where my daughter came to me, and I mean, I realized that she was cutting,
Mm.
and that was something that I didn't understand. It just doesn't make sense to me. But
Mm-hmm.
at first, it was really, I mean, unfortunately at that time, I was still learning how to do all these things, and I didn't understand it, so I didn't brush it off. But I remember a time where I kind of put it back on her, like, you're crazy. Why
Mm.
would you do that? That's dumb. And yeah, right. All the wrong things. I did all the wrong things. And, um,
Mm.
and of course, I realized and I saw that, okay, that didn't go over very well. I was tearing down any kind of bridge between us that I had built previously. So then I had
Mm.
to rebuild that and, not necessarily show her that I accept this behavior, but I still accept her and I
Mm-hmm.
still love her
Right.
regardless. And,
Yes.
how can I get in this with you? How can I,
Mm.
rather than trying to just discipline you out of this, I'm probably going to have to come alongside you and help
Mm.
you get out of it and walk
Mm-hmm.
with you out of it. You know what I
Ooh,
mean? So even though I didn't understand it, I still had to really identify with her as much as I could. And the only way
mm.
to do that is through asking a lot of questions, showing a lot of love, and
Uh,
the word patience. I had to be patient, and that's not my strong suit.
mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
doesn't come naturally. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but although as I get older and life goes on, I'm a lot more patient now than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, thinking about patience, I really do believe that patience does. It is one thing that we can do in being patient with our kids to help establish a safe place.
Yes.
If we're quick to judge them, like we were talking about, and just
Mm-hmm.
responding and the way that we respond, that's not really showing patience.
No.
But if they know, okay, you know what, I have something to tell my parents, but they're not going to like it. But I
Mm-hmm.
know they're going to respond
Mm.
in what's the word? Kind of like in love,
Mm-hmm.
but also not in emotion,
Mm.
not in like a reaction. Then they'll
Yeah.
feel more safe to come to us. Because really, I mean, that's what we want to do is we want it to create a place between us to where no matter what our kids go through, they will
Mm-hmm.
come to us. Because
Right.
what is the alternative?
Mm.
They're gonna. I know
Very.
a lot in this area. I've interrogated a lot of my daughter's friends, They come over. I'm the first time anybody comes over to the house, it's like, yeah, you can come over, but this visit is with me, and we're all going to sit at the table and we're going to talk because I want to know who you are. And
Yeah.
I'm amazed on how many kids today, especially I'm really speaking of teens and preteens,
Hmm.
they don't have much of a relationship with their parents.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so most kids, if they don't go to their parents, they number one, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen, is they've turned to their friends. They have their
Absolutely.
family outside of their family.
They do.
And right there, in those cases, you have the blind leading the blind.
Right.
So what good
Really
is going to come of that?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously that's going to cause more problems in the home and in the relationship in
Yeah.
the long run. So if you would, if we can invest early on, there's so many benefits, and we're saving ourselves so much heartache too in our kids.
Right.
So no, I love that you say that you dove in with her and that you were present and said kind of how can I enter into your struggle here, even though I don't understand and I'm not familiar, but you found whatever way you could to connect with her and say, I'm willing.
Yeah.
And to do that had to make all the difference for her.
Yeah.
So,
It does. It's powerful.
yeah,
Yep.
I was just talking to a teen, and I'll just share this quick story, but she was sharing how she was in a really tough spot and really struggling with just dabbling in the wrong crowds and dating somebody who was bad news and just trying to find her way. And she was reflecting on her experience with how her mother reacted and just that she basically made a lot of choices for her. She again out of fear, I'm
Mhm.
trying to do her best. She basically said, I'm sending you to boarding school. And the way that it was done, the way that she was kind of escorted, and she felt very powerless, and it was extremely traumatizing. But also, she reflected that, she got to the boarding school really not knowing what was going on and terrified and out of her element, and that she was unable to talk to her family for 3 months. That her mother had, decided that she would only be able to talk to her, and she dismissed every other phone call since she had that ability, and that she just felt so powerless and trapped. And I asked her, what would have helped you feel better? Because she acknowledged that she was going through a lot. She had issues and things she needed to work through. But I said, what would have made you feel better, less traumatized? And she said, I don't know. I felt like it was like she was like, I caught you doing this and I caught you doing that, and like it was like a punishment kind of reaction, and now you're going to get this because you did that. She's like, if I could have just heard her say, I love you so much, I care about you, I just want to see good things for you, I want to see you go down a good road, and that's why I'm choosing these, like she felt like even if she could have expressed just some of her own emotion behind what she was doing, that she could have felt more supported through it.
Right.
So yeah,
A
can make
good,
it.
whenever I think a good question to ask our kids when we notice them doing something that we don't agree with is, okay, why are you doing that? Why?
Yeah.
What's the outcome of that? Okay, so you're doing it for this, but have you thought about the long-term effects?
Mm-hmm.
Like number one, you're in trouble now. Have you thought about that consequence?
Right.
Have you thought about, if we're talking about drugs or vaping or anything like that, have you thought about what that's going to do to your body? Have you thought, and most of the time they don't think about that. They just think about, well, everybody else is doing it, so it must be okay.
Right.
And I
And
think,
really, I think, getting into their experience of what is it like and what's the feeling behind it. So not so much the behavior, but if you find out that your teen is smoking pot, for instance, obviously, you can react and freak out, and oftentimes that's the case. Or you can, try to put yourself in their shoes, or remember back to the times that you've, made decisions with your friends that maybe you didn't even mean to make or whatever, and ask questions like, wow, like what is that, what was that like that must have been confusing to be at a party with friends and not really know, feel kind of the pressure to do that. What was that like for you? How did you feel about it? Even those questions, even though it's scary because it feels like I'm letting go of control, you're going to get more of your child's heart. You're going to draw out more of the reasoning for themselves, that they can come to their own conclusion of what they did and why, instead of they're going to want to shut you out if you immediately come down on their decision.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Yeah, so important. Um,
Hmm.
time flies.
Are we out of time?
Not necessarily out, but we're
Okay.
well into it. Um,
Oh,
I definitely want to
okay.
take a minute though while we're talking here, and I want to share with everybody. You have agreed to come back for part two, so we're going to go on for about another 10 minutes or so. But part two will be on Monday, January 20th at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and during that time we're going to go into more specifically on creating a wellness plan for our family. And so you're going to take us through that, and so that's going to be like a great lead, a great next step from this discussion. Okay, we realize we need to build a safe home, but how do we do that? And so we're going to really dive into more on creating that wellness plan, because a wellness plan will help us establish that bridge between our children and us.
Hmm.
So, do you want to
Definitely.
give us a little
Yeah.
snapshot of that, or
Yeah.
finish
So,
anything else that you'd like to talk about?
sure, sure. I would say with our part two, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to go deeper. I think there is so much to say on this topic, and it's so valuable. It's so valuable.
Yeah.
There really, you can't talk too much about love and empathy. And so, yeah, I want to be able to go deeper into some of the, what does it look like when our child is struggling already? Maybe they've gone through something that you would consider a trauma, which there's many things we'll kind of talk about what can be considered trauma, which is a wound, right?
Yeah.
The different, what if they're experiencing anxiety, post-traumatic stress, depression, thoughts, that are not really their own, or, are outside the normal, and or even in crisis. What do we do then? How do we connect then? And going deeper into what empathy sounds like and looks like in those situations, and then really, how can we develop, like you said, that action plan, a wellness plan, that takes into account that individual child and their needs, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, what they look like when they're well, what they look like when they're not well, so that we can recognize the signs and symptoms, but come up with a plan with them, that keeps them well, and that kind of addresses maybe where they're needing extra, like self-care might not even be something that they know about. Or we might not be providing enough opportunities for margin in their downtime, and maybe they're needing that. And so we can kind of see where the pockets, maybe the holes are, and where we can add just some healthy things in that will help relieve some of the tension of the situation and help them get through what might be considered a crisis, or even like a pre-crisis kind of state, so they don't have to go to a crisis.
Yeah.
Um,
The importance of a plan. I was just thinking as you were sharing that on the plan, a wellness plan, and somebody, if that's new to you, or maybe you've never thought about, having it, or having your own plan. The value of a plan, what that does is it kind of creates a preconceived or a pre-set out set of events that's going to happen in your life. When we're at work, there's always an evacuation plan in the building. You go into a hospital, or you go into a building, there's a plan to evacuate in case of emergency. So it's important to have a plan in our own family of, actively going after wellness, actively going after that emotional strength with our kids. And so without a plan, things just kind of happen as they go naturally, right? And so a plan will establish a standard. A plan will establish boundaries, and it'll also give you a way to measure, what is the emotional, how is the safety level in my home, the emotional safety level, how is it right now? Is it a number 10? Is it a number 5? Or maybe it doesn't exist. So after the end of Monday's broadcast, you're going to have a plan that, number one, you're going to be able to say, well, here's where I'm at. And then 2, you're going to be able to begin to take action steps to create that plan. So this is going to be it's going to be a great discussion.
yeah,
Definitely looking
absolutely.
forward to that.
Yes, and I appreciate that you all, know that it's a process, and
Yeah,
that we're journeying together, right? That it's
for
not
sure.
a one and done thing, but that it's ongoing. Although we will have action steps for you, but it's something that you too can, revisit and go in depth with your family, or maybe more than one child, or for yourself. And we're just kind of going to go through at least the principles and show you where to go. and ask some important questions that are going to help you assess things that you haven't thought of that are affecting you either positively or negatively, and how you can move forward. So I want you to be empowered. But yeah, we have a few more minutes here.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So I guess I'll wrap up with that time did fly. I had thought about, we talked about the fear-based decisions as parents, how we can, because as humans and as adults, we might struggle with fear, or that might be how we've lived for all this time. And so then we can make our responses happen out of fear. But what we want to do is we want to move to this other side of a love, freedom-based relational. So really kind of the spectrum is, a fear-based model of parenting is about rules and religion and punishment, which is really control. Like we're going to control the situation, even if you don't think of it as punishment, right? Even control can be a form of punishment. And the manipulation that just leads to a lot of things. Fear doesn't do anything good for us. We think it's a safe thing. We think it brings us safety, but it actually brings so much icky stuff that you don't want. So what we're trying to move toward is that relational, love-based freedom model. Relationship and love brings the freedom, brings the connection, brings everything you're really wanting and longing for. And I had found the verse, or I thought of the verse that says, love never brings fear, because fear is related to punishment, right? But love's perfection drives the fear of punishment from our hearts. And so it really is love that is going to melt the pathways of fear. And there's even brain research on how, just because this is the way I've been thinking, or I've been dealing with anxiety or depression, doesn't mean I can't recover and heal from that. Absolutely not. And even epigenetics is showing us the power of renewing our mind, changing our thinking, and our brain chemistry actually changes. And so love actually melts the pathways of fear. Yeah. So it's so important. And obviously love can look a lot of different ways, but it has to be the root. And then, looking at like what happens when we have rules without relationship, we get rebellion. When you have rules without relationship, you get rebellion. So the disconnection, that lack of safety.
Somebody needs to write that down. That's a good one.
That's a quote. So I will give credit to Bill Johnson for that. Rules without relationship equals rebellion.
Wow.
And so the disconnection and that lack of safety is, three factors here: fear, anxiety, and punishment. That's the disconnection, which is going to be a lack of safety in the relationship, versus the connection. The safety is in love, empathy, and empowering choices. Love, empathy, and empowering choices for our kids. So, the great lie is that other people control me and I can control other people. And that leads to manipulation. We don't want to manipulate our children. We don't want to teach them to manipulate others, or even us, to get what they want. So really, without love, we're nothing, but love enters into the pain. And that's kind of where we're going to pick up next time, is entering into that pain of, whatever situation is going on with you personally, or with your children, or a specific child, where there's pain and there's confusion and there's, we don't know how this happened, but it's messy and we don't really know what to do about it. That's trauma, but there's healing, and there's a lot of love coming from our God to heal those wounds. So I'm excited about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Going back to what you were talking about with love versus fear, and everybody has a parenting style, and, a lot of times, we could think about our lives as a child, and we can identify the parenting style that our parents had. Mm-hmm. And, I was thinking about this while you were talking and sharing this with us, is that, many of us can, have used fear to control or manipulate our children. And because it works, it does work. It's a powerful tool. It's not the best tool, by any means. And I think that, thinking about the difference between what kind of connection that builds between us and our kids, especially in terms of our relationship and bringing correction as they grow up and as they break rules, are the consequence, is this that whole transaction of the consequence, the time from the breaking the rule to the application of the consequence, that's such a critical, there's a critical element in our relationship, and it's going to be if it's done in love, you'll have one result. If it's done in fear, you'll have another one. But I think that, it's no secret that a lot of teenagers, as they go through the teenage years, they begin to break more rules. They begin to experiment freedom, or experiment. I should say they begin to experiment how much freedom they can get. Because they and to do that, a lot of times they break rules. But if I'm wondering though that if we really start early on with our kids and develop that love relationship rather than fear-based, they will see less rebellion in the teenage years because there's a heart connection. They won't want to break the rules because they don't want to hurt you, not because they don't want to get caught.
Right, right. And the hiding, there's, like you said, or the opposite of that vulnerability and the openness is the hiding. And I don't know about you, but I've lived in hiding way too long. And I've really, as an adult, I'm so glad to be free of that. And that's pretty recent, and I think the sooner that our kids can learn those, boundaries, healthy boundaries, but with freedom and in love, the better, because the effects are so long lasting, and, it'll be easier now than later for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Right on. Well, what, if you could sum this up like parenting accurately, I asked you earlier so that you're ready for it. What is parenting accurately to you?
You act like you gave me such a heads up, Jason.
I did, like an hour.
Parenting accurately. Well, I mean, I immediately was just a fan and on board with what you're doing. You and Erica are awesome people, and your family's amazing. And I just love that, like, you guys are, you're not doing this out of anything but just a desire to really, to see your own story and what you guys have walked through happen for others, and to see the redemption there. And so, that's what I see is, I know there's more to your vision than even this parenting piece, but for you to open the conversation, for you to provide a safe space and a community where people can talk about these things and hit on different topics, but in a format that, just feels more real, more tangible, with video and things like that. I think that a lot of parents were ready for real. We're ready for, not just what we're going to read in a book, or we're ready to be done with our conscience telling us that we're failing as parents. Like, we're just ready to get to be better and to be more accepting of ourselves so that we can then love our kids and just do the thing. Right. So we want the love, we want it all, but we don't really know where to start. So I see parenting accurately as kind of this compass and just this, again, safe space and community where we can explore these things together as parents and just learn and grow.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Well, we definitely want to thank you. Before we say goodbye, I just want to remind everybody, if you go to parentingaccurately.com, I have put a webpage up, and I wrote a free resource that I want to give each and every person. Just fill out your name and email address, and then you'll have an opportunity to either download, and it'll also be emailed to you. I wrote a quick 7-day guide on how to strengthen and build your connection with your teens. I know that, again, we're talking today a lot about the teenage years and how they can be very challenging at times, but it's a resource. I think 7 days, it'll help you. If you apply the things that I wrote in there, you'll see an improvement. So go there. It's free for anybody that would like to. That's a resource available for you. Well, again, Libby, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and join us. And we definitely look forward to we definitely look forward to Monday. That's going to be a great time. Want to make sure, don't miss that, guys. If you're not able to join us live, you can definitely catch the replay. But one last thing, thank you to the audience for joining us, and feel free to leave comments, send us an emails. We'd love to see and hear how this is helping you. If you have any questions, we'd love to really interact with you and take some time to answer them on the show. So thanks again, everybody, and I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.